My dad took my college fund and manipulated me with suicide threats. For context, I'm currently a college freshman on a full-ride scholarship to my university. Every semester, I receive a check for about $9 to cover my housing costs. My unemployed father got evicted from our old address for not paying rent, so my family started living in a hotel. I was curious about how they were affording the hotel, which cost $150 in a night. It turns out my father used my college check to cover the hotel expenses for 2 months. I spent 2 months begging him to pay off my college housing costs. He kept lying to me, saying the money was tied up in some funds that were hard to access, which was very confusing for me, given that I have zero financial literacy, and he never explained in detail. I hoped everything would work out. My college housing office gave my father a deadline of November 1st to pay the housing costs. For those 2 months I was incredibly stressed, unable to eat well, sleep, or socialize. If the payment wasn't made, I risked having to drop out. When the deadline arrived, I called my dad to ask why he hadn't paid the housing costs. That's when he finally admitted he used the check to pay for the hotel we were living in. I was furious and started interrogating him like a prosecutor. He blamed the family for needing the money and even blamed me. He had been giving me allowance money for 2 months, claiming it was from relatives, but it was actually from my $9 housing check. When I asked why he did this, he said he didn't want to stress me out. I broke down, telling him I worked too hard in high school to have to drop out of college. I demanded an apology 3 times over the phone, but he refused, insisting he had done nothing wrong since he was providing for the family. I asked him again and he said sorry in a mocking voice. I told him that he was full of shit, and he started saying that he wants to put a gun to his head and kill himself and it will all be on me. This is not the first time he has done that. I told him to do it, and I hung up. My mom called me and I informed her about the situation. She told me to apologize to my dad and I told her, as psychotic as I may sound, I have no remorse, especially after what he did. My mom threatened to disown me, but I somehow mended things with them for 3 weeks. It is currently Thanksgiving break, and my father still didn't pay off my check, and he said that he would get money Saturday to pay it off. My mom told me again to apologize to him after he paid my housing costs, and I said I would avoid conflict. But I think I'm way too stubborn to apologize, especially because I genuinely think I have nothing to be sorry for. My dad never fully apologized and made a joke out of me to the family. Update. First and foremost, immediately after this happened, I managed to get a separate debit card without my parents knowing. I don't have a job now, but I'm looking to get one later on in the semester. I didn't go to the financial aid center because my dad somehow managed to pay me back. I'm going under the assumption that it's through my grandmother's Social Security checks. Last December, after weeks of calling my father to make up for my scholarship money and pay me back, he finally sent me a check for $9. The check came in my dorm mail around midnight. I was asleep by then and my dad was spam calling my phone to tell me it was in the mail. I didn't call him back until 1 in the afternoon because I had an exam that day. He started cursing at me, telling me how he couldn't sleep all night because I didn't answer my phone. I talked back and said, "The stress you put me through for 3 months by lying about my scholarship check is nothing compared to the stress you went through for a day." He started insulting me in every way possible, telling me that I was spoiled. I swore back saying, "Are you being serious?" and he hung up. Moments later, my dad made my mom call me because he didn't want to argue with me. She screamed at me saying that I should always have respect for him as a father, and that I should apologize for swearing. I said that yes, I did swear at him, but he did too, calling me a bunch of slurs and whatnot. She also accused me of purposely ignoring them when I made it clear several times that I was asleep and I had an exam at 9 in the morning, hence not calling them at midnight. I told her that we shouldn't even have this talk because he was clearly in the wrong in this entire situation, and every other kid would have gone to the financial aid center, and my dad would have gotten in trouble. My mom misunderstood me for saying that I was going to report my dad. She had a mental breakdown and hung up. Moments later, my dad called and told me to go ahead and report him because I would be going to jail instead of him because he sent me some of the money from the check, which is bullshit. I called him out on his bullshit and he said that he was permanently severing ties so I could learn my lesson. He hung up. I didn't call them for a week until I realized that I didn't have a place to stay for winter break. My dorm closed. I swallowed my pride and called them back to apologize. They said they'll accept me back to the family. This honestly still keeps me up at night, but I literally didn't have a choice but to stay with them over break. Over break, they've noticed that I'm way more cold and distant towards them, and they still wonder why. Luckily, I got the $9 check from my university to pay for this semester's housing fees. The best thing that came out of this is that I ended up reconnecting with my estranged sister, F25. Long story short, my father financially abused my sister for years, maxing out her credit cards and leaving her $20 and K in debt. They cut all ties a year ago after my sister started dating a guy they didn't approve of. When I was on good terms with them, they painted her as the bad guy, telling me that she betrayed them by choosing her boyfriend over the entire family. I also didn't know that my dad financially abused her. Turns out she was in the same situation I was in and ended up dropping out because my dad didn't let her take out a student loan. I talked to my sister and she said that she was honestly glad that she severed ties with them because she's finally financially independent, even if she's not financially stable. We're closer than ever and I probably consider her as a shoulder to lean on. Mentally, I'm really not doing well. I'm generally stoic, but this is taking a hard emotional toll on me because my family was my world. Before college, I always knew my father was insane, but my mother was my ride or die. I told her everything. I helped her through her marital problems. She told me everything. And the fact that she chose my abusive, unemployed father, the man that she always talked about wanting to divorce, over her daughter, is heartbreaking. She still expects me to be her armchair therapist, and she told me she wants me to act like how I did before. I told her over break that no matter what she does, she will never mend back the trust I had for her then. And my father, despite his flaws, I never expected him to use my check. He put such a huge emphasis on education, and told me he wanted me to have the life he never had. And knowing he would sacrifice my education, just so he could live in a fancy $150 in hotel, is very disheartening. Recently, I've been very isolated. I still talk to a few people. My grades are falling, and I haven't been eating or sleeping well. Maybe this situation should be a wake-up call for me, but I've come to the point where I'm completely apathetic about everything. I refrain from drugs thankfully, but even so, I feel like my life is on autopilot. Comments. Me, Z Romeo. The best thing you can do for yourself is to complete your education. Stay focused on school and strive to do your best. Make friends and maintain contact with your sister. Also, seek out counseling at your school. They can help you deal with your family issues. Old Afternoon 2459. Lock your credit. Get a P.O. box. Make sure you have your legal documents. Melissa 3670. You can order a birth certificate from the state you were born in. If you have that and a license, you can go to the Social Security office and get your SS card. OOP, if my dad gives me my legal documents. Chromatic jury. You would be absolutely shocked about the degree to which you don't have to go through him for any of it. Here is the process for gaining copies of your own legal documents. Order your birth certificate online. Go to your state website and find out how. Almost all of them use this one clearinghouse nowadays to do it. It's not necessarily cheap, and it requires confirming your identity to them. Do you have a school photo ID and a state photo ID? When you do it, try to order at least 3 copies. Go down to your high school and talk to the administration about getting certified copies of your high school transcripts, and about locking or securing your high school records against your parents' inquiries. Of course, your high school can always send certified transcripts to any future school, but it's incredibly useful sometimes to have them on hand. Get online and look up the requirements to apply for a passport. It is 1000% worth going through the process because it is the strongest identity document it is possible to have. They don't expire for about 10 years, and once you have one, they are renewable with very little beating around the bush. Whether or not you intend to ever study abroad, your school's study abroad office probably has advice and assistance for how to do this. Utilize your school's P.O. box system. It was about $50 and every 6 months for me to have a P.O. box down at the post office when I was in school and I could not afford it. I started using the free P.O. box system through my school and I never had any issues. This is how you get Amazon deliveries. This is where you receive phone bills, bank statements, and whatnot. Call up the health department in your city and state, or the city and state you lived in as a young child, and ask how to get your immunization records. Some states keep these now in an online database, and it may just be a matter of verifying your own identity in order to access them and pull them down. Call up your family pediatrician's office and do the same thing with them you did with your high school. Verify with them what the process is to lock all of your historical medical records against your parents' inquiries and any future ones. Sign documents if you need to do so. Don't just take the nice receptionist's word for it. Other commenters will undoubtedly chime in with additional advice. Just know that parents like yours, and many I have seen including in my own family, have an uncanny ability to truly make their kids believe that they are the gatekeeper and access point to things their kids need when they are not. When you have a belief pop into your head with any faint hint of, but I would have to go through my parents for that, or I would have to go through my dad for that, Write it down in a notebook and start questioning it immediately. Talk to people at your school, talk to offices, talk to friends, come on Reddit, and talk to other people's parents to find out how you can do things that your parents may have deliberately never taught you how to do in order to consciously or unconsciously ensure your dependence. I've had to do this. It's painful, and it can look a lot like what they call growing up in public. But you are at the right age for it and never be embarrassed. So many people will step in the gap and advise a hungry student on exactly what they need to do to get things done.